Hey everyone. Ever feel like happiness is just this thing that you kind of stumble into?
Or, don't stumble into.
Exactly. Like it's totally random. But get this,
Yeah.
we actually have way more control over it than we think.
Well, more than we realize for sure.
Up to 40%.
Yeah.
Like that's huge. That's what we're diving into today, all about the science behind happiness.
Based on this podcast episode, we thought it'd be right up your alley.
It's called The Science of Happiness, Habits for a Joyful Life. We're going to uncover some surprising stuff.
Oh, yeah. Bust some myths, too. And most importantly, figure out how we can actually use this stuff.
How to apply it to our own lives.
Yeah.
Because what good is knowledge if you can't actually,
Put it into practice.
Right.
And the fact that happiness is even, quantifiable.
Yeah.
It's kind of mind-blowing. That 40% we can influence, most people have any clue.
I know. It's not just some vague idea. There's actual science backing it up. But that made me think,
Yeah.
what even is happiness, really? Like, is it about feeling blissful 24/7
No. Not
or
really.
having zero problems ever?
If only. The podcast breaks it down well. It's two main things, actually.
Oh.
First, there's life satisfaction. Like, how content are you overall with your life? Big picture.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then there's positive emotions, those bursts of joy, gratitude, love, sprinkled throughout your days.
So it's not about chasing this constant high,
Right.
but finding that balance. Feeling good about your life and having those regular good vibes.
Exactly.
But you know what? There are so many myths out there about happiness.
Yeah.
I used to think
Oh, tell me about it.
I'd be happy when I got that promotion or bought a house, you name it.
The classic, I'll be happy when trap. We've all been there.
Have we?
But the podcast digs into research showing those big wins.
Yeah.
They just bring temporary joy. It fades so fast. What's wild is that lasting happiness, it's more about what you do daily, small, consistent things, not waiting for huge milestones.
So it's the journey, not the destination, as they say.
Yeah, right.
Which leads to another myth this podcast busts.
Lay it on me.
That happy people have no problems.
Right.
Like they just float through life without a care.
Haha, right. Like some magical unicorn. But come on, life throws curveballs at everyone.
For sure.
It's about being resilient, riding those waves and still finding joy along the way.
I think a lot of us also fall into that trap of comparing ourselves to others,
Yeah.
especially on social media.
Oh, 100%. It's the highlight reel effect. We're bombarded with everyone's best moments, successes.
Vacations, perfect families.
You name it. It's easy to forget everyone has struggles. What we see online is so curated.
So true. But knowing these myths helps us see happiness differently. So how do we actually cultivate it?
Right.
The podcast talks about 6 habits, backed by science, gratitude, relationships, movement.
Mindfulness, helping others, pursuing passions.
I'm so curious, what stood out to you from the research on those?
Well, let's start with gratitude. Simple things like writing down 3 things you're grateful for each day.
Okay.
Studies show it can seriously increase your happiness level by 25%.
25%. Wow. So it's like shifting your focus from what's wrong to what's right.
Exactly. Rewiring your brain to be more positive.
I love that. Okay, what about relationships? Obviously, they're important. But what did the podcast say?
This blew my mind. They talked about the Harvard Happiness Study. Huge research project, ran for over 80 years.
80 years.
And you know what the biggest predictor of happiness turned out to be?
I'm guessing it wasn't money.
Nope. Not wealth, not achievements. It was the quality of your relationships.
Wow, that's powerful. Speaking of feeling good, what about movement?
Exercise.
I admit sometimes it feels like a chore.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious, how's it tied to happiness?
Well, it releases endorphins, those natural mood boosters. You know, that feeling after a good workout.
Yeah.
Or even a brisk walk. That's them working their magic. And the best part is, you don't have to train for a marathon. Just 20 minutes of moderate activity can make a difference.
20 minutes, I can do that. Okay, let's talk mindfulness. It's such a buzzword these days.
It is.
But for our listener, how did the podcast define it? How does it play a role in happiness?
So, they describe it as being present in the moment. Focusing on what you're experiencing without judgment,
Right.
like hitting pause on that constant stream of thoughts and just tuning into your senses, what you see, hear, feel.
Interesting.
And the science is cool. Studies show mindfulness can reduce stress, improve focus,
Really?
and boost those feelings of peace and contentment.
It's like giving your mind a break from all the chaos.
Precisely. And it can be simple, even just 5 minutes focusing on your breath.
I like that. Okay, 2 more habits to go. Helping others and pursuing passions. Let's start with helping others.
All right.
Is there proof that being kind makes us happier?
Oh, yeah. Turns out acts of kindness, big or small, activate the reward system in our brains.
Interesting.
Releasing dopamine, oxytocin, all those feel-good chemicals. So when you help someone,
Yeah,
you're not only making their day, you're boosting your own happiness too.
I love that. A win-win. Now, pursuing your passions. What's the science behind that one?
This one's all about flow. The podcast describes it as being totally absorbed in something you love,
Oh, yeah. I think I get that.
where time flies and you feel this effortless joy.
Totally.
Yeah.
Is there anything else they mentioned about pursuing your passions?
They stress that doing these things regularly fuels long-term happiness and fulfillment.
So it's more than just checking things off your to-do list.
Right. It's about those things that make you feel truly alive.
I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, though. Do we have to overhaul our whole lives to be happier?
Great question.
Oh.
And thankfully, the answer is no. The podcast is very clear about that.
Okay.
You don't need drastic changes all at once.
Right.
It's the small, consistent actions that count.
Okay.
Think of it like planting seeds of happiness each day. Over time, they grow and create this ripple effect.
I love that analogy. Way more manageable than changing everything overnight.
Right.
Are there any real-life examples of these habits working?
Actually, yes. The podcast tells this story about a woman named Rachel.
Okay.
Super successful career, but feeling totally unfulfilled and overwhelmed. So she made 3 changes. Started a gratitude journal, 3 things she was grateful for each day.
Right.
Joined a yoga class, so movement and mindfulness in one.
Makes sense.
And made an effort to reconnect with friends. Regular coffee dates, that sort of thing.
I can see how those fit the habits we've talked about. Did it make a difference for her?
Big time. Within weeks, she noticed a shift in her mood, her whole perspective.
That's amazing.
The podcast makes it clear it wasn't instant, but a gradual improvement. It's about consistency, small steps.
So encouraging. Shows it can work, even when you're feeling stuck.
I love that the podcast ends with an exercise.
Oh, yeah. The 3 good things exercise.
Seems like a perfect way to end this part of our dive. What do you think?
Totally. Simple but powerful way to train your brain for positivity.
So walk us through it.
Okay, it's easy. Think of 3 good things that happened today, no matter how small.
Could be anything. A delicious cup of coffee. A kind message from a friend.
Taking a moment to appreciate the sunshine.
It's about actively noticing and savoring those little joys. Exactly. And by focusing on the positive, we're actually rewiring our brains to be more tuned in to the good stuff.
Training your mind to spot happiness even in the everyday chaos.
You got it.
We're back. And you know what's been sticking with me?
What's that?
That idea that happiness isn't about never having problems. Because, let's be real.
Life happens.
Exactly. Life is always going to throw curveballs.
Yeah.
But the podcast made this point that really resonated. The true happiness is more about building resilience, like developing the skills to navigate those challenges.
And still finding moments of joy along the way.
Right. So it's not about avoiding the tough stuff, but learning to handle it better.
Yeah.
It's like that saying, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react.
Totally. And those happiness habits we talked about, those are like tools to help us respond to life's curveballs in a more positive, constructive way.
I love that. It's like they equip us to weather the storm and come out stronger on the other side. And what's so cool is these habits are accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
It's not like you need special skills or tons of money.
Exactly. You don't need anything fancy to start practicing gratitude or mindfulness or kindness.
It's so empowering.
Right.
It's not about reaching some perfect ideal of happiness,
Right?
but making those small, consistent choices each day
Yeah.
that gradually shift our mindset.
And create a more joyful life.
Which reminds me, there's all this research backing this up.
Oh, yeah, tons.
The podcast talked about all these studies showing that even little acts of kindness or gratitude
Or even just taking a few moments to be mindful.
can seriously boost your well-being.
They really can. It's about those tiny ripples of positivity spreading outward.
I love that visual of ripples spreading. It
Wow.
shows how connected we all are
It does.
and how much our actions, even the small ones, can impact those around us.
Speaking of connection, that reminds me of another key point from the podcast.
Oh, what's that?
The importance of social connection. We
Well-
touched on it briefly with the Harvard study.
Right, that 80-year study.
But it's worth emphasizing just how crucial relationships are for our well-being.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The podcast really drove home the point that strong social connections,
Are one of the strongest predictors of happiness and even how long we live.
it makes sense though.
Mm-hmm.
We're wired for connection, for belonging. It's part of being human.
It is. And those meaningful relationships give us a sense of support, of love, of belonging.
It's like a buffer against stress and a reason to celebrate the good times.
It is. So cultivating strong relationships,
Yeah.
it's not just about our own happiness. It's about contributing to the well-being of those around us, too.
I love that. It's like this beautiful cycle of well-being.
Exactly.
We support each other, lift each other up. It's happiness as a collective endeavor.
It's not just about me, myself, and I.
Right. It's about creating a world where everyone has the chance to thrive and experience happiness.
Now, that's a powerful thought.
It is. So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to leave our listener with a question to think about. What role can you play in creating a more joyful world?
Not just for yourself, but for the people around you. It's a question worth pondering.
It really is. And as you do, remember that every act of kindness, every moment of gratitude,
Every time you choose mindfulness.
it's a step towards a more joyful and fulfilling world for all of us. We've explored so much about happiness in this deep dive, and it's clear it's not just some fleeting feeling, right?
Definitely not. It's about actively making choices, building those positive habits into our lives.
If there's one thing that really hit home for me from all this research, it's that happiness isn't like some finish line you cross. It's more of an ongoing thing.
A journey for sure. We're all on it.
Exactly. And like any journey, it has its ups and downs, unexpected turns. But the key is to keep moving forward.
To keep learning, keep growing. I like that.
And to remember those happiness habits we talked about.
Yeah.
They're like tools to help us along the way, to deal with the tough stuff and appreciate the good stuff.
I love that analogy. They're like a compass,
Yeah.
guiding us towards a life that's more fulfilling and meaningful.
And we get to choose which tools to use, right?
Exactly. It's all about finding what works best for you, what fits your values, your goals.
And being patient with yourself, too.
Oh, absolutely. It's not about being perfect or happy all the time.
Right.
It's about progress, not perfection.
Such a good point. We're all human. We're going to have days when we struggle, when those negative thoughts pop up.
It happens.
But the key is to keep practicing those habits, even when it's hard.
I agree. It's like building a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to circle back to that question we asked earlier.
What role can you play in creating a more joyful world, right?
Exactly. Because happiness isn't just about us. It's about creating that ripple effect.
Spreading the positivity to those around us.
Imagine if everyone made those happiness habits a priority. If kindness and compassion were just like the norm.
What a world that would be.
I think it'd be a world with more joy, more connection, more meaning. People would feel supported.
Empowered to live their best lives.
And that brings us to the core of everything we've been talking about. Happiness is a choice.
It is.
It's something we actively decide each day to build those positive habits, to nurture our relationships.
Just really live with intention.
And it's a journey we can all be on together. So let's learn from each other, support each other.
And spread that happiness as far as we can.
Beautifully said. So as we sign off, we hope this deep dive has given you some fresh perspectives.
And some inspiration to really embrace those happiness habits.
Remember, even small steps can make a big difference.
They really can.
And when we focus on our own well-being, we create that ripple effect of positivity.
Touching everyone around us.
Until next time, keep those happiness habits flowing.